Well, you're back for more, are you? Fantastic. Because today we're going to look at the problem of the fossil record in our ongoing series looking at creation versus evolution and the problems of evolution. Now, what you'd expect to find as you dig down beneath the layers is the deeper you go, the further back in time you go, and the more simpler the life forms you'd expect to find down there. But there's a huge problem called the Cambrian fossil record. And what you find there is that when you look at the Cambrian period of time, you get all these. You find that there's fossils of every major organism that we see today, living today, and that's why they call it the explosion. It's almost as if there's been an explosion of life forms in that period of time, and it's a period of time that lasted, according to scientists, just 5 million years. Looking at that layer of rock. Now, let me put this into context for you. 5 million years. On a planet that is supposedly, according to scientists, 4,500 million years old, indicates not even 1% of the time. It's 0.1% of the time the Earth has been around. So that represents a huge problem. It's like a blink of time in evolutionary terms, and it's said to have initiated virtually all the major forms of multicellular life that we see today. As Cornelius G. Hunter said, it's like in a geological moment, the fossil species went from small worm-like creatures and the like to a tremendous diversity of complex life forms, including virtually all of today's modern designs. And that's a huge problem, isn't it? And the second blow to evolution that this Cambrian fossil record shows is that there's no trace of any precursor life forms in any of the earlier layers of the Earth's crust. Now, even Richard Dawkins admits that this points to the Cambrian fossils being those of fully formed creatures with no ancestors from which they evolved. He says it's as though they were just planted there without any evolutionary history. That's what he says. And try as they might, they've never been able to make the facts fit the theory. Berkeley law professor Philip Johnson said this, that the Cambrian explosion is the single greatest problem which the fossil record poses for Darwinianism. So, if this standard evolutionary model was correct, we should expect to find the Earth teeming with intermediate life forms, missing links between all the different evolutionary stages, but they're simply not there. They're not there. And why? Because God fully formed and separated the different kinds of animals that we see today. He made them according to their kinds. Now, obviously, people have had to try and come up with evidence for this, and there is many different things that people have done. Now, let me go through all of these. All right. First of all, in Germany in 1857, Neanderthal man was touted as the vital missing link, but the evidence against it has become so overwhelming that most experts now agree with the verdict that Neanderthal was a card-carrying member of the human family. Neanderthals were human, just slightly different. A bit bigger heads, but we get all kinds of different varieties of sizes of heads throughout the world, don't we? What about this? For 40 years, a collection of bones found in southern England in 1912 was dubbed Piltdown Man. It was trumpeted as the sensational missing link. Everybody now knows that it was a gigantic hoax. A 400-year-old human skull was married to an orangutan's jaw. In 1922, a single tooth unearthed in Nebraska and said to be up to 5.5 million years old attracted international headlines as proof of a link between apes and humans. But within 6 years, it was found to have come from a peccary, a pig-like wild animal that, like the Nebraska man theory, is now extinct. And the problem is, when these things hit the headlines and you look in the newspaper and you read this and you think, oh, all right, so it's true, is it? All this evolution business. But they never go back 6 years later and say, oh, yeah, what we posted in the newspaper 6 years ago. Yeah, well, it turns out that it was just a pig's tooth. They don't do that. They don't do that, which is a shame, because it just leads people down the wrong path. People just see the headlines and away they go, and they think that's the end of the story, and it's not. What about this? The original owner of a large skull found in East Africa in 1959 was given the name Nutcracker Man. and acclaimed by National Geographic as evidence of man's evolutionary descent from the ape. But sometime later, even the paleontologists who found it withdrew their extravagant claims, and it is now generally accepted that the skull was that of an extinct ape. Well, about this, in 1974, a tiny skeleton found in the Great Rift Valley in Ethiopia was named Lucy and said to date back to at least 3 million years. The media took Lucy to their hearts, and she was widely promoted as having been the first ape to walk upright, but experts in the field have since reduced the so-called evidence to shreds. Now, why are people so desperate to mislead at best and at worst create these giant hoaxes? Well, it's because the idea of evolution explains away God, or some would say it explains away God. And that's why some people, watching this right now will accept everything that they hear that hints at evolution, because you want to believe it, because people want to explain away God. Why do people want to explain away God? Because if there's no God, there's no judge. There's nobody to judge us at the end of our lives, and we can live and do however we please. And that can be a very attractive proposition to someone who wants to live for self. But there is a God. And I want you to get away from this notion that he's out there to spoil your fun. He's not. He's not out to spoil your life. He's the author of life. He created life. And if you want that abundant life, a life full of joy and peace and hope and love, then we have to go his way. And we will find that when we go God's way, we find it's the best way. Thank you for watching. There'll be more of these, so please do subscribe, and I welcome your comments below.